Damn right they're on top of the world. They still hold that MSI championship. Welcome everyone to the LEC post-game lobby after the first day of the second round robin and of course the entirety of week 5. I'm Shox here with Ender and Buipo and Broxa from Fnatic. We've already had them for picks and bans just a little before, but now we will have a chance to really dive deeper into Fnatic's situation as well as the rest of the league. First up though, G2 wins our match of the week. Just G2 things. I know that you guys didn't have that much chance to watch the game, but Ender, give us, you know, the takeaways of how they won this one.
I mean, there was a lot of focus on the mid lane towards Humanoid. He did not get much chance to play League of Legends, and this was one of the first early ganks we saw from Jankos. He was very active throughout the map and sort of showcasing a lot of what we talked about early on with the ability to find these engagements with the Yasuo in the bot lane.
There we see it. They did let it hang a little bit fast and loose as the mid-game approach, which we've seen from G2.
That's fine. That damage is okay.
There's nothing wrong with that damage. What are you talking about? Yeah, in general, a strong game from G2 once again. Was there anything you saw off the games, Broxa and Buipo?
Not too much, honestly.
Not too much.
You saw the Nexus go down, basically.
Nexus
But I did see that Jankos got player of the game with Sejuani, which is pretty impressive. Something I struggle to do myself in the Sejuani meta.
You may not have seen it, but there was actually a moment where he got chased in the mid lane, but what he did instead was he flashed ulted to kill Humanoid in the mid lane. So you can do something flashy with Sejuani.
Well, when I see a Sejuani get player of the game,
you take notes.
He has been playing a really good Sejuani.
Must be a damn good Sejuani.
Yeah.
Key player of the game. Indeed, you said it already. Jankos, 61% of the vote, which is a bit peculiar because it was Sejuani and also because Mickey was on his Gragas, so people would have thought that that was what it would
People just don't love supports. I'm sorry.
They hate
supports, they're the unsung heroes of the LEC. What are you going to do? Like, they don't do damage. They try their best. They get things done. He only did 7K.
He did more than the Sejuani.
Okay, my logic has been used against me.
Indeed. So there, G2 wins the match of the week versus Splyce. You're talking a lot about the development of Splyce and, you know, if their ceiling is higher than what we've seen so far, how much do you take away from the fact that they couldn't win this game versus G2?
I mean, I think we look at it, right, and G2 are the best team in our league.
Yeah.
So you try to beat them, and that's sort of you judge how well you do against G2 as it's the judgment of how well you do internationally is basically what we look at for our teams here. So like, yes, they're not going to beat G2. We knew they weren't better than G2. They did hold their own for a little while there, but ultimately, like, this team still has a long way to go.
But not everyone plays like G2, though.
Oh, sure. No. But it's like,
okay.
So one of the conversations we had, like, especially with Frost, I talked with her a lot about this, is that we've never in EU had a team come back after winning an international tournament. So it was always very hard to judge, like, how would we perform internationally. Yeah. So because G2 actually won MSI, it's now a good, like, rubric to try and determine, like, how well will you do internationally.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yesterday, CrownChat was talking a lot about how G2 leveled up the rest of the region. Do you guys feel the same way, or do you think it didn't as much apply to you guys because your ceiling was relatively high already, Broxa?
I think having some really good teams around is definitely important, and I think both this year, but even last year already, I think the EU teams were starting to get better and better as a whole, and well, now with G2 being so good this year, we, you know, all of a sudden have a really, really good scrim partner in them. There's teams like Splyce and Origin who have stepped up a lot and really coming in and showing some good play, and yeah, I think it's a really good thing for the region as a whole, having a team like G2 especially that can play this type of style and really test you in different ways than some of the other teams can, and at the same time play at such a high level.
Of course, last year you guys were on top of the world here in EU, winning everything quite easily, I should say. How different is it playing in EU this year around, Buipo?
It's harder. I feel like the overall level of gameplay has gone up. I think players individually got better or, well, replaced. So I feel like in general there's a bigger pool of good players going around in the LEC.
Indeed. Let's take a look at the standings, because earlier Fnatic, of course, got a big win in the fight for top 2, setting the stage for an intense race between you guys, Splyce, and G2. Now G2 is number 1, Fnatic number 2, and Splyce number 3. So, you know, we're looking at you guys in terms of the road back to the LEC title, and we got some flack for being very critical of your 2 last games. But I think from our side, that's understandable because we look at you guys in the lens of world finalists, 2-time champions last year, a team that wants to be back at the top, right? And I would love to know how you guys think about those 2 games and how you lost them, and if it was just a blip on the radar or if we should be looking into it more.
I think in the Splice game, it was the first game where we just had a really, really bad early game. We had some early games that were not ideal and, that could have been better, but usually we would somewhat quickly find a way back into the games. But against Splice, it just went really downhill really fast, and while we did manage to slow the game down, we just didn't really find a way to deal with the Kiana especially, and we couldn't really find a way to make sure that Humanoid didn't carry the game. And yesterday, I felt like it was a bit similar, where we just played, way faster than we actually should have, and it just went really downhill really fast to the point where we didn't even manage to set up a proper defense before it was already too late, and they just ended the game.
Yeah. So is this indicative of things that are worrisome for you guys as a team, or is it as simple as, okay, were these mistakes and they'll be easily rectifiable, as we also saw today?
Honestly, I feel like as a team, when we fall behind, we're really good at finding our footing. I think that even when the game is going bad or we might have lost 1 or 2 fights in a row, we're able to reconsider how we approach the fight and set up a game plan of, all right, we're going to focus this target this way, we're going to set it up that, and let's fight. But I think in both games we played, we weren't able to do that, either on execution or on... We didn't really find any way of like really breaking open the game. So in that sense, I do think it's a blip on the radar because we're usually really good at this, but sometimes it's just very difficult.
Yeah, you guys usually bounce back, indeed. W5D2, you talked a lot about not being happy with your own performance at certain times, last split and this split. How are you feeling now in terms of your development?
I feel like most of this split I've played pretty okay. Certain games better, certain game worse. Yesterday was not a great game for me. Even though we lost against Splice, I feel like I played an okay game for the most part. But again, it's not what I'm looking for. It's not pushing past what I think the limit should be. So after yesterday's performance, I feel like I overshot my expectations for the split. And I feel like outside of that game, I played a pretty good first half of the split. But yeah, it leaves a very sour taste in my mouth, especially because I was pushing a champion I think is quite strong, and I wasn't able to make it show.
Yeah, well, you have a lot of games to prove why you are doing really well. Broxa, same question for you. Of course, the big story coming into the split was all of a sudden there's Dan there, waiting on the bench as well. How has that kind of influenced how you've played throughout the split?
I don't think Dan coming has influenced me as much as people actually think. It seems to be kind of a story now that bringing in a substitute for me has motivated me to work harder and become such a good player. And I think it has been blown a bit out of proportion, because I think Dan coming in has been good for the team as a whole, because it's a guy coming in from the outside with a new perspective on how to play the game and a new perspective on our weaknesses in the team. So I think having him come in has definitely been good, and him working as sort of like a combination between player and having an extra coach has been really helpful too. But at the same time, I personally have no doubt in my mind that I would have stepped it up after Spring Split, because after we didn't even make it to the final in Rotterdam, I was really down. It was a really hard one to deal with, and sure, having him around and wanting to play the LEC games is motivating and all, but at the same time, I'm pretty confident I would have stepped up either way.
How do you feel you've done?
I feel the same way as Brivo, where I feel like it started pretty well. I think I've had a pretty good split as a whole, but at the same time, I just had 2 pretty poor games against Splice and Rogue. So right now, it's not. It feels a bit bittersweet. Before the game against Splice, I would have said that I was pretty happy with my performance overall, but at the same time, now I'm at the point that I need to get back to those performances that I had when the split started.
Is that so? Because if you look at the dynamic of the Fnatic now, as opposed to the Fnatic with Caps last year, do you feel like a lot more has to come from you in terms of getting things started almost entirely? Or Bwipo has a pop-off game and just kills his lane opponent 3 times at the beginning of the game? Do you think there's more on your shoulders to get everything going for the team?
I feel like I'm playing with a lot more responsibility for sure now, and I feel like part of why I sometimes now have games where, it goes horribly wrong rather than the past where I was always really consistent and I didn't have as many pop-off games, but I was just pretty consistent and I almost never, did worse than the opposing jungler. Now there's a lot more, it's a lot more important that I try to find these plays, and especially, something we struggled with in spring was to find synergy between me and Nemesis. Now we are getting that, so he's helping a lot in terms of pressuring the map and all this, but at the same time, losing Caps obviously does mean we're not playing as aggressive as we were, because Caps just goes in and goes crazy, and back then I was the one having to hold back, whereas right now I've had to learn to try to be the one pushing a little extra.
Okay, how's the synergy with Magic Felix?
I think I think my synergy with Magic Felix is all right as well. Obviously, we didn't really get to play the 2v2 as much as we wanted to yesterday, so we didn't really get to show that. But I think Magic Felix had a really good debut game despite us losing pretty brutally.
Are we going to see him again?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question.
No problem. We already cleared it beforehand. You guys, of course, can't give us any insight into what happens. How is the team synergy then? Let me ask it that way. How is the atmosphere within the team and like the positivity going forward, getting closer to playoffs?
I think people are just generally, we're getting back on track after this win, that's for sure. I feel like we hit a little bump in the road playing against Spliced, losing, and then again, losing twice in a row was a bit of a bump, but I think this win will help people set the goal again, reset the expectations. All right, guys, it's fine. We lose 2 games. We're still 8-2. We're second place. Yeah. Again, top 2 is where you're aiming for. Of course, you want the first seed, and we're going to fight for it, right? We are coming for that first seed. But if we get the second one, we're still happy that we get to compete, get to go straight to the finals, right? So all in all, I would say it's pretty good. I feel like we had a good performance today. Everyone sounded ready to win, ready to play on stage. Yeah. So I think we were pretty confident.
Good to hear.
Yeah, do you feel like there were a lot of learning opportunities for you guys from those 2 losses? Because like just sort of watching those games, it felt like it was less like glaring team mistakes and just like individual players going too ham at inopportune moments. So I'm curious whether or not those losses, people always talk about like losing is the best way to improve. Like, are those actually losses where you can go and find nuggets of information that will level up your team? Or were these games that were just sort of just outlier games, I suppose, that you just throw away as just bad performances?
I think we can definitely learn a lot from these games, and just looking at the game yesterday, there's a lot to take away. I think it already started off when I went for the first gang top. That was just, it was just really overforced. There was no reason to go for that type of stuff, and if we just decided to play the game a little slower, then it would have been a whole different game. And the same thing happened a bit later. We took a fight outside of Drake, I believe, a fight we didn't even have to take in the first place. And yeah, just in general, we played way too rushed. We took too many risks. And if we played the game much slower, then we would probably have won. And I think that was a really important learning experience, that while trying to look for plays can be a good thing, but there's no need to overforce either.
Yeah, I am also a little bit curious about that top lane jungle 2 versus 2. Like, obviously, it was our first Rengar top lane we saw in the LEC. But sort of looking at that match, it was like, okay, Rengar needs to push up in lane to like fully maximize his brushes and like go for these aggressive trades. So it would stand to reason that top lane 2v2 is going to be really important. And there was Olaf first picked on the other side. So me looking at that game was like, this seems like a very bold decision here, especially pairing with the Silas that I think is maybe a little bit weaker in those fights up against an Olaf. How do you guys feel about that?
For me, honestly, I feel like Rengar is, he's a unique champion. He has his own way of playing, but I don't think you need to maximize any champion's power in any lane, right? You're not going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm playing Jace, I need to maximize my poke and harass this guy the maximum amount. Sometimes the jungler is there and you got to back off, right? Same goes for Rengar. You got to know when, you know what, you can have my bush. I'm going to go wait until my jungler shows up or whatnot. So in that sense, of course, the 2v2 is important, but it's not like you can't concede it. Rengar doesn't disappear,
He does. That's his ultimate. That's sort of his thing.
Well, after 6, yes. But
for you, it was before. Only just one. It's because we know each other, guys. It's no big deal.
But the idea is you keep your pressure up. Once you have control of the bush, you're a very scary cat. And then when you lose control of the bush, sure, it sucks for a bit, a few levels, but you're still a pretty beefy champion. His battle roar is quite a broken mechanic. Some would say. It is. He heals a ridiculous amount. So in that sense, he can hold his own under the turret until it is his moment to pressure again.
Do you feel like from your side also, Bwipo, you guys just kind of lost control in both those games? Because it's like when you play a game yourself and you die and then you go into the same situation, you die again, you say, okay, you know what, I shouldn't do that anymore. But then it happens again and again. What are kind of the difficulties at reining everybody in at the same time when you're in a game like that?
I think the biggest issue we had in the Splice game specifically is that we didn't find our footing. We didn't fully understand that, you know what, the game's actually in a fine state. Because we started that game off like with a pretty bad early game. We had a deficit, and then we clawed back, right? We played the side lanes, played the TF, got a few picks here and there, and then all of a sudden, you rewatch the game now, and you're like, oh, we're 4K gold up. What? We had all the pressure. What? What went wrong, right? And then it was in a moment like that where no one was calm enough to say, you know what, we don't actually have to go for this play. We're winning both side lanes right now. Let's just go side we weren't winning both sides because Kiana could one-shot one of us. But point being, we could just play the side lanes, play a slower game, play a smarter game, and we would be fine. But we felt like there were some key cooldowns down. We could go for a play on the Xayah, messed up there, and then the game snowballs back into their control. And the road game was a bit of the same problem.
Yeah.
You go for the first play, it fails. You feel like you can go for another one, because now, their cooldowns are down, and then you get smacked again, and you're like, oh, well.
Yeah, there we go.
Awkward.
There's a lot of hype around Rogue. I think it maybe died down a bit today after they lost to the brand new Misfits. And a lot of talk on social media as well from pro players and from coaches that Rogue is a lot better than people give them credit for. What do you guys think?
Well, I think Rogue has been looking surprisingly good, actually. I was a bit skeptical seeing them put in so many new players all of a sudden, but I think the roster has been performing really good. I feel like, they're by no means a top team right now, but I would definitely say they're somewhere in the middle of the pack, and they are doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, they can get to playoffs perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, I think a player that stood out for me is Inspired in the jungle. I think he's actually had one of the most impressive rookie splits so far this season. I just think he has a really good understanding of tracking the enemy jungler. And even today, I'm not sure if you guys got to catch the game, but against Misfits, the first 10 minutes where there were constant pings on the enemy jungle of where the jungler was going to be. There was very good deep vision. So I'm curious how it feels playing against such a new face, because I know junglers can often get a feel for playing against each other, and he's sort of that new unknown.
Well, for me, I don't feel like I got the full experience of how he plays yesterday, because we threw the game away so early, and I was playing from behind pretty much the entire game in a rough matchup. But at the same time, I think he has shown already that he can look to play aggressive, and he can really start snowballing and be in the enemy jungler's face when he has to, which is something that is pretty rare to see from a rookie. And I think he has had a pretty good split so far, and definitely is one of the better performing players on Rogue's roster right now.
Before we move on to our next topic, I would just kind of like to get a thought about Misfits Gaming, just because you guys, of course, played against the roster that is now no longer there in spring, and then most of summer as well. What ultimately do you guys think went wrong for that roster? I think I feel the same way.
I mean, it was hard to believe that something could go wrong, right?
Yeah.
That's the main thing that you realize is it went wrong. Honestly, when you have a bunch of good players that play together and you all have your own opinions, there's two things that could have happened, right? Either the players weren't as good as people gave them credit for, which is, again, I don't want to go that way, because I do feel like all the players gain their respect through years of performance, right? I don't think there's a single player on that team where you were like, that guy, he is not as good as people think he used to be. So in that sense, I'm not sure what to say. It's a bit baffling that it happened the way it did, and especially that everyone jumped ship, right? Was it really just a one-year deal? Let's just make a super team for 1 year. If it doesn't work,
yeah.
Or did they want to grow something, and it turns out that this is the way they wanted to go, which is strange to me, because again, even if you have a bad split, a bad year even, I'm sure you can make something work if you're committed to it.
As a caveat, you say, I don't want to say that about these players because they have all these years of experience, but people fall off, people evolve,
Right.
So it could very well be, right? Or are you saying that what you saw from the individual players up until now, you think that they were all playing to the level they should have? Could that not be a factor at all?
Honestly, I would have to properly have a good look at everything, right? Because were they as crisp as they used to be? Probably not. Let's be real. But the question is that their problem? Was that their fault? Was it the environment they were in? Was it the champions that they were asked to play? How much freedom did the players have? How comfortable did they feel? There's a lot of things that factor into performance, right?
Absolutely.
And I feel like it's a combination of everything. It almost has to be, right? because I don't want to believe that, you know, the rosters they set up, but it turned out that all 5 players got carried by the people that they played with before. I think that would be exactly that would be a very extreme way of putting it, right? So in that sense, I'm sure there's still good players from that roster that will find success in the future. The question just is which are going to and which aren't, because the people that aren't, I feel like they're going to be, well, scapegoated.
Yeah, absolutely.
They will take the blame for this roster's performance, and I feel bad for those players.
Well, there's already a couple of opinions out there of people really getting bashed for when we don't know the inner workings of the team and we can't really tell. Just to theorize, with super teams, I think it all balances on that edge, right? Because if everyone's playing to their top performance and everything is great and there's a honeymoon phase and there's no issues, of course it's going to be great. You're going to win worlds, whatever, right? But I feel like super teams are hit the hardest by small underperformances and things not going exactly the way they should, because then they're going to start second guess themselves and think, okay, hey, I am able to do this. I was on top of the world. Why is it not working with these guys? What is going wrong? Like, and then the communication starts to deteriorate. And I feel like that's a very difficult problem for management and coaching to deal with. Again, that's just my own opinion, right? But
yeah, I feel like, honestly, this is where the coaching staff comes in, right? This is where, if you have a solid coaching staff with a lot of experience, which, again, they also had, right?
Yeah.
So what went wrong? But, for example, Joey, Youngbuck, I think he's really good at when the team is underperforming, he's just like, this right here. That is the problem. We're fixing it. And then giving us, you know, the necessary information to make sure that we are fixing it, and then checks, okay, are we getting better at this? Whether it be the early game, mid-game, neutral objective control, how to set up this, how to set up that, when to approach, whatever. Any of all that, it's not necessarily something other people don't know. He just knows how to bring it to the team.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that's something that can definitely work with the team. You guys have rapport with each other. You've been playing together for a long time. Yes, you brought in Nemesis, but the majority of the team is the same. I think it's a very different situation when it's misfits, where this team has never known success. This roster never knew success. So yes, you can come in as a coach and you can try and it's like, let's fix this one thing. Even if they fix it, they then lose the following week, which means that you don't have the trust, you don't have the results to actually like build up and have confidence in yourself.
Sure, but how many weeks do you need to fix everything?
Sure.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. I think the period of time that it took for performance to truly show was longer than people expected. I think that is the more surprising thing than the fact that
is it weird for you then that the timing is like week 5 of the summer split? It almost feels like just write the year out and maybe something happens, or But
that's what I'm saying. That's why it's strange. I feel like everyone's just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
This is fair enough. I feel like you could at least just, you know, you might as well play out the last 4 weeks. You know, who knows? Maybe they win the next 8 games.
It's so hard to say what's happening on this team, honestly. Like,
it's interesting to think about.
I definitely didn't expect this to happen, but at the same time, you know, we can sit here from the outside and speculate about all sorts of crazy things, and no one really knows what the actual case is, right? Like, maybe there was just some disagreements and clashes. Maybe they just couldn't find their ceiling. Maybe the Misfits wants to bet on the academy team going forward. It could be so many things, right? No one really knows.
You're right.
On the last note, we were 3-7 and we went 11-7. So, I mean, we made it.
It can happen. It can happen. But I think you are right. It is interesting, I think, to theorize because it's such an enigma, right? Like this super team that we were all so excited for. And, you know, Gorilla coming to Europe and the Moose is back, and it all seems so perfect. I would say even in summer, I had a lot of hope at the beginning when the Moose came back and stuff like that, but it didn't happen. Maybe they sit down and have a long conversation with someone. They don't have to by any means, of course, but I'd love to know what happened at some point. Moving on, we're going to focus in on some players, specifically because I asked Ender and also on Twitter the LEC fans to pick out their mid-split all-pro dream team. So one player from each team, and to get the creative juices flowing, we're going to start with Ender's team. There we go. This is your mid-split dream team. Alfari, Xerxes, Caps, Upset, and Hylissang. So, motivated.
Yeah, so I mean, with the parameters that you can only choose one player from each team, I figured the best place to start was like, look at the roles that I think are least stacked in terms of talent. So for me, surprisingly enough, I think mid lane has the least depth in terms of talent, and also support. So when I was looking at it, the options were either Caps and Hylissang for me, or it was going to be Nemesis and Mickey. down in the bottom lane because.
I gotta say, I'm baffled that Mickey's not out there. But
No, yeah, but that's the thing. The question is, do you value Caps
Someone
higher
else.
than Nemesis than you value Mickey over Hylissang? So my bet was I valued Caps further over Nemesis than I would put Mickey over Hylissang. So
Fair.
I ended up going with Caps and Hylissang. And then you're put in an awkward position where you can no longer choose from Fnatic or G2. So just sort of going top to bot, I felt that Alphari has actually been like very consistent and just one of our strongest weak side top laners in the LEC so far. Xerxes outside of Broxa and Yankos. He's like my top 3 jungler at the moment too, so I put him in there. And then AD carry is the one where you have to look way down because like all these top teams no longer have the option. Can't actually pick them up. So I think Upset has been probably the most consistent out of that Schalke roster. And I think he's been playing very well.
Yeah. Is there anything that's like a glaring, I would have done something different from you guys?
Well, mostly for me, I'm just happy seeing Huli there, honestly. I think Huli has been performing really well this split, and you know, he has always been going a little bit under the radar, I feel like. Even though he got some praise last split, he has been performing really, really well and is bringing a lot to the team, so I'm just happy to see that being highlighted here.
As a note, Nemesis tweeted, "Hey Bwipo, can you please stop talking so much so we can perform?" Thanks. So how it
We're going to be here for another hour.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, Nemi. We'll try and wrap it up. Yeah, the team is actually waiting. That doesn't always happen. I think they really like want to go home together, which is nice, though. Is he talking more, Nemesis?
Yeah, I definitely think he's starting to find his place in the team.
That's toxic, man. What the hell?
He doesn't
I even
talk,
told him it's okay if you guys want to leave.
he doesn't talk as much as Bwipo, but he's starting to open up to the rest of us. So,
Okay.
maybe
Does he
won't
just
talk-
say-
maybe he won't talk too much to Bwipo after this. Maybe he's a bit salty that
Yeah.
he's keeping them waiting. But
Don't feel self-conscious. We like this. You always give good content in interviews. You know what? I just got from production, Nemesis, just to annoy you, we've gotten another hour on the free GL. Isn't that great? No, I'm just kidding. We're going to move on pretty quickly. And then, yes, is there anything else that you guys would have changed? Obviously, nice that there's some praise for Hilly.
I mean, on the Hilly note, I feel like he gets too much,
Flack?
yeah, too much flack when he has the bad games. Because I feel like when he has the good games, he's actually carrying alone almost, right? And then when he has the bad games, he's like, oh, it's the worst player I've ever seen.
I feel like it's because in years past, and also his UOL legacy, which is something that I think everyone, including Caster, struggle with. Things that happened in the past, people remember those and like to bring those up when it like occurs once again. And he used to be kind of a coin flip player and very aggressive in the Unicorns of Love days, in the early Fnatic days as well. But I think that's fair of you to say that, hey, now it's a different Hilly and these are off games. And I have to agree with you because for most of the year he's been playing, like last year he was insane as well. So yeah, good stuff. All right. Yeah, I think that's about it. If there's no more remarks about Enders, there's a lot of, you guys are pretty happy.
I mean,
with
I
it.
think it makes sense. I think Alphari is a solid top laner.
How good would this team be? So, like, assuming all these players stay on their main rosters, like Caps is still on G2, where would this team finish in the LEC after playoffs?
Like these players?
Yeah, so this is a team.
If you like, they have insane synergy from the get-go.
I'm actually not sure because honestly, I feel Upset and Reckless. I feel like Hilly is a player, he needs to have his freedom. I'm not sure how Upset is. I'm not sure how much he wants his support to be in lane. I heard yesterday, I think there was a comment about he felt like Ignite was roaming too much. Was it yesterday?
I mean, so when we look at Schalke's history, he actually gets like so little attention. If you look at like support proximity, jungle proximity, like his support just is never in the lane. So I feel like he'd do great with Hylissang.
Well, that's the thing. He seemed like, to me, he seemed like the player that was the opposite or would want the opposite, right? So, you know, maybe he would do great with Hilly. And in that sense, we know Hilly and Caps, if they get together, the enemy mid laner is not going to have too much fun. So in that sense, that can go very far, even if even if your top side isn't stable. But in that sense, we have Alphari, a very stable player, and Xerxes considered a pretty good performer. So honestly, yeah, you've got the mid support that's gonna wreak havoc in the early game, and then the jungler can just hop in and woo.
So this team's playing G2, right? Who camps mid lane harder? Is it Hylissang or Mickey? Who kills Caps more times?
Hilly, easily.
Hilly, excellent.
Good stuff. Now I want to see that team play versus G2. All right. Moving on to the Kia Player of the Game leaderboard. Our man Broxa, who's right here, is in first place, followed by Jankos and by Humanoid. And it's important to note that in the event of ties, the player that has received the highest percentage of votes will end up coming out on top. Broxa is topping the leaderboard board. Screw all the haters. He's up there, guys.
Are you going to keep picking Lee Sin so you can keep getting player of the games?
Yeah.
Like, is that the ultimate strategy here?
I'm actually sitting here thinking if all those 4 games were in Lee Sin,
They were all on Lee
Yes,
Sin.
they were all
at
on
least
Lee
3 or
Sin.
4. So yeah, I guess I have to convince my coaching staff that
One
we're
of them
playing
was
Lee Sin
Gragas.
twice next week.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one of them was Gragas actually.
Is anyone very absent? Because I know these player of the game votes, obviously there's only 3 that are eligible for being picked. So is there anyone that is glaringly missing from this? A lot of people, but...
I mean, jungle is unbalanced, as we can see.
yeah, exactly.
Mid lane coming in close.
Yeah.
I feel like you could, always bring up someone like Caps, for example. I think Caps has always been playing really well, but at the same time, G2 is so stacked,
Oh,
and they
yeah,
have so many
where's
good.
Caps?
They have so many good players, right?
He's usually up there.
Not seeing Caps here is a bit off, but at the same time, it's no surprise seeing players like Jankos and Perks take the spotlight, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note that it's the Kia player of the game leaderboard of 3 players for every game, so it's not like it's a gospel in terms of MVPs. So yeah, there we go. Ender, who would you think would be on top if all players were always eligible and everyone would vote?
I mean, based on the first half of the split, honestly, Broxa, you're smurfing, dude. I honestly don't know how else to put it. Yeah, okay, I gotta be real. Those 2 games didn't look very good, man. There were some grim engages there.
In these
but
3
those other games, you were like solo games.
Yeah, let's go back to the Smurf.
I think in those 2 games, you looked like the 7th best jungler in the split, and then in all the others, you looked like the number 1.
There you
I mean,
go.
the 7th at least. It could be worse.
Yeah, okay. Well, as we close out week 5, let's get another look at the best moments from the Rift in our Alienware big plays. First up, our back-to-back MVP Caps danced around with Excel yesterday, and this fight is simply perfect execution.
With level 9, and we've actually not seen them a lot. Because now Casually's picking a fight with Caps or vice versa. Pop Blossom will come up. This will buy some time. Caps manages to get away just for now. Expect is in some trouble as he was stunned up very, very briefly. Caps takes him out with the help of Wonder. Now he's looking for another target. Teleport's being channeled. Here comes Perks. Doesn't have an ultimate available to him, but the Boomerang Blade, as well as the damage, will secure yet another kill. G2, 10 kills already. Remember the stat we talked about. Only G2 and Fnatic have secured more than 40 kills in a weekend.
Caps is so good at this champion, it's actually unfair. In a 1 versus 3 where he doesn't have pressure, in a fight that he should lose, and he's still going!
Unbelievable, continues to chase down, is gonna dash forward, looking for Mystiques, and will find the kill, will get away, and it's Mickey.
Okay.
I can't really move.
I can TP too. Oh,
You're kind of, yeah.
I think
Hello.
it might just be. Yeah, I think
I can shield you.
I could TP though.
Oh.
Fine, maybe. I'm TPing. I TP. Flash. We can take it. Stop here. Do you have W or something?
Soon. I will use Vent Rock.
There's no flash.
Zaya is flanking, I'm flanking too.
Zaya, no flash.
Hey, get head. I'm tanking now. So
Hey, Rakan does not flash as well, right?
Jungle take.
I think I'll basically go bottom.
And then
Yeah,
I have
I'm
TP, Nico's TP as well.
I'm checking cannons here. Okay, right, kind of.
I'm coming with you. I have heal for you, so you can debate him maybe.
You want to chill me?
Yeah.
I have TP. I can TP behind them.
Maybe just one.
I TP behind. I TP on rip up.
Zaya no flash node, Zaya no flash node.
I'm shielding again.
I'm just pushing top.
Well, I guess she had ult, I didn't know that.
Someone is here. I just.
I'll base.
I can move behind them.
So calm, and then Jankos comes in and is like, go in. Pretty calm comms, actually, for the games that are always that crazy.
Yeah, my favorite is I can shield you, we can debate them, personally.
Rouge, oh my gosh. Rogue's Woolite had an angry Rengar, sorry Bripo, running after him yesterday. A quick flash was all it took to send the beast back to the fountain.
Come on, guys. Really?
Engage it, but Rogue pull off at the perfect time.
And meanwhile, check out bottom. Sivir is chasing down Whippo, forcing the ultimate out of Rengar.
Is gonna go back in, tries to get the kill here, goes back into the bush. No, freeze frame, goes back in, not enough! Brings it back on the Boomerang Blade, and Woolite outplaying.
I'm gonna base around mid.
Go bot or not?
I think, hey, you can kill Rengar.
No flash, no ult, I mean.
Okay.
She has nothing.
Yeah.
I got Rengar.
Nice, we
Oh,
killed them both.
nice. Woolite. Oh my god.
So?
Nice.
Yeah, just push top.
Woolite, oh my god.
Oh my god.
A little bit of desperation going into that one.
Yeah, but I was especially the first one I found curious because when we were watching, we were like, wait, are they actually going back in? It was, well, we could of course see that there were 3 other people there, but still.
What do you mean, top side? Oh,
Yeah,
no,
top side.
I mean, it was my fight, right? My fight, I was just, I felt like I could outplay him, but yeah, he flashed the boomerang when I should have flashed it, so. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
how that ends. Okay.
If I flash it, I'm pretty sure I win, but.
Okay. Okay, then. Next up, the Italian stallion
I didn't.
Jizuke. He didn't have the eye of the tiger earlier this split, but today he landed a clean knockout on Origin.
I'm going. I will go Silas.
I'm going right here.
I need to back up.
Lob them into the wall, show them their place, put them in their graves. Alfari lands the perfect ult for the fight, and now CaboShot has to flash away.
Alfari still on the chase here. He got the double kill, but he wants more. CaboShot must turn Jizuke on the flank, but it's not enough. OG are going to get the kill.
Oh no, Patrick might go down. Jizuke can do so much in this fight. The shutdown comes out. Patrick, one more auto, the package. Oh, Jizuke takes out one. He has to turn to Alfari next. Oh, he almost gets down Nuke Duck as well. Can Jizuke do this? It would be a hero play for Vitality.
Jizuke is playing out of his mind right now. Just 1 HP, 1 auto attack is enough to
Nuke
kill,
Duck doesn't
but he
know.
still wants more. On the ward, Nuke Duck must run back in towards his base, but Jizuke is not going to let him out easy.
Nuke Duck could feel that one whisper by his ear. Now he's trying to get to the wolves, the TPUs, but the chase is on. Phosphorus Bomb doesn't quite find its mark, and Nuke Duck will escape.
What a letdown. He didn't kill him.
I mean, I'll be honest, the Gnarl was more impressive.
Yeah, you were like, look at the Gnar.
like the Gnar was so sick.
Jizuke. Yeah, I wish we, like, I'm glad we see Gnar, but I wish we would see more of it. I mean, we'd get tired of it if it's every game, but like the Gnar ult is like one of the most satisfying things to see in the game.
She wants you to play Gnar, Wimbo.
One champion, cute. Yordle,
I actually did play him. I did
strong.
play him earlier this split, but I don't think I got a good ult off, so.
Okay, well, lessons.
We want more.
Okay, then that will be it for us for this week. And then next Friday, we will be back, of course. 5 more games, including Fnatic versus Misfits Gaming. Oh, that's actually quite exciting because you're going up versus the brand new roster. Is that in a way more difficult because you don't know what these guys are going to throw at you?
Well, it's obviously really hard to expect what's coming,
Yeah.
right? I believe they played both games this weekend, right? So at least we have
Yes.
2 games to watch, and
They won one.
Lida and Kirei has been playing a little bit already, but at the same time, it's so hard to say what's happening in the Misfits camp right now, and it's going to be exciting to see
Well,
what they bring.
Rogue beat you and Misfits beat Rogue, so it's going to be a hard one.
And
Boxer.
Fnatic beat G2, so
So-
Misfits is better than G2?
And TSM? What? How does that work? I also think Misfits has the unofficial World Championship belt.
They do.
Yeah, it's good. I love how producer was like, confirmed. They have it. Nice. And then we have our match of the week is on Saturday. Origin versus Fnatic. Very interesting. A lot of history, all that yada, yada, yada. But from a pure player versus player perspective, Buipo, how do you think you're going to do versus Origin and Alfari?
He's a solid player. It's hard to gain
Yes.
advantages over him. I feel like he's one of the only players that I haven't quite gotten a solo kill on, so... Always fun to play against him because I feel like he pushes you to being smart. If you're not smart about how you play, how you lane and whatnot, you're just going to fall behind. And I think that's always an exciting way of approaching a game sometimes because, you know, it's not always fun to brute force advantages against everyone. I feel like that's what he's really good at, stopping you from brute forcing advantages. And it's always an interesting matchup in
Yeah,
him.
he's incredible in lane as well. Broxa?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing them as well. I think Colt has been looking really good this whole year, so it's always a pleasure going up against him. He's not usually the in-your-face type of jungler, but he plays really smart, and yeah, it's going to be exciting to get back on the Rift against him.
Ender, who's winning?
I'll put my money on Fnatic right now. I think they look a little bit more consistent overall. Origin are putting the pieces back together, but seems very similar to last split where they start off weak and they're trying to ramp in towards playoffs, but this will be a really fun matchup to watch. We're probably going to see it again in the postseason.
Yeah, getting closer and closer to playoffs. It's going to be super hype and more League of Legends across the Atlantic because LCS is about to start with Cloud9 versus 100 Thieves. And after their last game over there, we'll have our rebroadcast from the LEC. I think we've talked for enough. I think Nemesis will agree. Thank you, Buipo. Thank you, Broxa. And thank you, Ender. Always a pleasure talking to you guys, but it's time for us to call it a night. Thank you very much. We'll be back Friday for more action in the LEC. See you then.
they might be able to turn this back around.
Flash in, stunned up, the CC coming out from Exile is perfect, and now Trick is caught in the midst of two, but he takes down one. Expect looking for the dive against Trick underneath the tower. G2 member versus G2 member, and Trick is the one that comes out on top.
In typical G2 fashion, Schalke win the game.
Maybe Dandan can do it. Look at Neon, he's going to take down Puppet. Kiwi's dead, but Dandan's in there, and the Baron's low, and Dandan gets it, and Misfits have somehow found the fight.
Absolutely unreal. Wulai now trying to turn around, but there goes Dandan.
Dandan, so good they named him twice.
Yes! Okay, calm down, calm down.
Misfits change their whole roster, and then take the win.
Jizuke on the flank, but it's not enough. OG are going to get killed.
Oh no, but Patrick might go down. Jizuke can do so much in this fight. The shutdown comes out. Patrick, one more auto, the package. Oh, Jizuke takes out one. He has to turn to our party next. Oh, he almost gets down Nukeduck as well. Vitality take down Origin in week 5.
Dreams will be the sacrificial lamb. Gray with a massive ult, the big pop-off, but there's no follow-up here. The gold card will connect. Selfmade on the retreat. SK are getting torn apart. They bit off more than they can chew, and in the fight that they pick, they die. Cap's now going to run for his life. Wants to take a grab, a grass blade, buy a bit more time, but no wants to turn it instead. Oh! I thought he'd run. He was not having it. It looks like he might just get taken down, but Parks to the Mr. Team. Yasuo damage is just too much. Kiana will move in for the kill. Oh no, no doubt in your mind that they are the top team in the LEC.